In this segment, I'm going to try to show the relationship between fixed costs, variable costs, and total costs, all as a function of quantity. Now, I'll forewarn you, after we go through this exercise this time, this isn't very useful going forward. It's only useful to help understand the meaning of the things that are useful. I think it's still worth doing so that you feel comfortable with the next piece, which is the piece that the pieces that we're going to develop next. We're going to use those over and over, but this is good as a stepping stone to get us there. Okay. So what I'm going to try to graph here is fixed costs and total costs. I think we can do that without specifically graphing variable costs, but let's just see how this goes. I have a little bit of a trick question, or a trick kind of that I want you to see as we go. That's why I'm being a little ambiguous, I think. So I'm referencing my notes. I couldn't imagine doing this on your part without looking at my notes. In my notes, I have a table of values. I don't have the space for it, nor do either of us have the patience for me to list an entire table of values on this thing that I have here. So you'll have to refer to the table. That's for both of our sanity. What we have listed here are various quantities and all the costs associated with those quantities, okay? So when the quantity is zero, here comes a little trick. See how you're doing. When the quantity is zero, total cost is 100. When the quantity is zero, total cost, I'm going to use this color for total cost, is right here at 100. Trick question. What is variable cost? Zero. Because it varies with output, and output is zero. So if total costs are 100, and fixed costs, variable, if total costs are 100, they are because there's a dot there, and variable costs are zero, what is fixed cost? It must be 100. So I'm going to use this color, which I know won't show up very well, but I think that's okay. And you'll see why. This will illustrate, it shows up pretty well, fixed costs. So right there, fixed costs and total costs are one and the same, and only there is that true. Now, when production goes up to 20 units, some bills are going to rise. In a way, we could say two, the way we're categorizing things here. Variable costs will rise, which means total costs will rise. What are fixed costs? What are fixed costs when the quantity is 20? You could answer that without looking at the table because they're fixed. If they were 100 when the quantity was zero, guess what they are when the quantity is 20? They're still 100 because they're fixed. So using this, what is showing up as blue, that's the same. Oh, it dries. It dries differently. There's fixed costs. I'm forming curves is what I'm about to do. But when production is 20 units, total costs are 105. So that should be up just slightly from 100, right? So, if total costs are 105 at 20 units, how much were variable costs at 20 units? It's the difference between them, right? Because total costs are equal to fixed costs plus variable costs. What I have here is two of those three things. I have the total costs and the fixed costs. The gap between them must entirely be the variable costs. So if fixed costs are 100 and total costs are 105, variable costs are 5. That's $5. When we move out to 40 units, what are fixed costs? Come on, this should be getting easy by now. Fixed costs are fixed, so it's still 100. Variable costs, well, let me phrase it the way I did before. Total costs are 108. So that should be upward of 105. Something like that. I mean, it's a slight, I'm probably exaggerating based on my scale here. But so how much are variable costs at 40 units? $8. When we move out to 60 units, what are fixed costs? Come on, this is the easiest question. 100, because that's what the monthly bills are. So is it okay with everyone if I just say something like this? Fixed costs are just fixed. They're a horizontal line. Let me make sure this is going to show up in the screen. Fixed costs are fixed. They're constant. Let's think about what that means. Apply the graph to the logic. No matter what the output level, the costs are the same. They're the monthly bills. We're just graphing the monthly bills like that. That should be one line. It came out very thick because I wanted it to be nice and crisp, so it's just one line. The total costs do vary by variable costs. They're driven by the changes driven by total costs here. So at 60 units, variable costs must have been 16 because total costs went to 116. So that's still just a little bit north of where we were. At 80 units, we're at 130 for total costs. So we're somewhere like here. So what are variable costs? If this is 130, variable costs are 30 because this height is 30. And that's the difference between total costs and fixed costs. When we go up to 100 units, total costs rise to 150. So variable costs were 50. When we go to 120 units, total costs rise to 180. Why is that happening? When we go to 140 units, total costs rise to 220. And when we go to 160 units, total costs go to 275. So we're talking about something like that for total costs. So as output rises, because we're bringing in more people, our total costs are increasing at an increasing rate. Why are total costs increasing at an increasing rate? Because those workers' output is increasing at a decreasing rate. Those diminishing marginal returns. And our costs here are a function of output, not workers, but output. Since each worker is costing a fixed amount of money, wages, but each worker is yielding less output, the cost per unit of output is rising at an increasing rate because that production function increases at a decreasing rate. So that's why diminishing the marginal product of labor, the diminishing marginal product of labor is the driver of these costs that we're exploring. That's what I mean by that. That's what's causing the action. So I want that to be comfortable so that this can make sense going forward. Now I'm going to stop this segment. I'm going to keep my horizontal scale on here, and I'm going to take these off here. And as I said, these are useful for figuring out the next step. After that, we don't use these very much. The things we're going to derive now, we're going to be using quite a bit. So I'll see you on the next piece.